Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I thought I'd seen it all: meth heads, bar fights, suicide standoffs. But nothing prepared me for the war that started with a smiling HOA president and ended with armed guards at my gate, my wife in danger, and a fight for our land that nearly broke us. This isn't a neighborhood. It's a battlefield. I've been a cop for over 15 years. I've wrestled tweakers in Walmart parking lots, broken up bar fights with pool cues still swinging, and once talked down a guy holding a nail gun to his own temple while wearing nothing but a bathrobe and glitter. So believe me when I say, I thought I'd seen everything. That is, until my wife called me, her voice shaking like I'd never heard before. But let me back up. My name is Grayson Randall. I'm 42, a sergeant with the County Sheriff's Department here in southern Arizona. I live with my wife Jessica in a house we designed ourselves, perched on a quiet 3-acre parcel outside the HOA lines of Silver Mesa Ridge. That outside part is important. It's not just a formality. The property sits on legacy land, exempt from all community association jurisdictions due to a grandfather clause in the original zoning deed. My grandfather bought it before Silver Mesa even had paved roads, and it's stayed in the family ever since. Our house is our fortress. Steel gate, biometric locks, high-definition perimeter cameras. Jessica jokes it's overkill. I say it's called living smart. Jessica is a painter. She works from home, surrounded by desert light, birdsong, and whatever playlist she's got on while she turns blank canvases into entire damn worlds. She's the reason I don't turn into just another hardened cop with a gun and a pension. She makes the house feel like something more than secure walls. She makes it alive. Our little slice of peace was, for the most part, respected. Most of the neighbors were retirees who kept to themselves, a few ex-military types with metal detector hobbies, and too many flags. It was quiet, until Karen moved in. Karen Helms arrived like a thunderclap with a wine tumbler. She replaced the former HOA president after a very public financial scandal involving a missing landscaping fund and someone's new golf cart. She won the vote by promising order, oversight, and restoring the spirit of the community. Translation: absolute control, with a smile that never reached her eyes. From the start, she didn't like us. Too independent, too outside her grasp. She made a point of checking in during walks, pausing at our fence line, staring at the cameras, asking Jessica if we'd ever considered streamlining our aesthetic to better match neighborhood standards. Jessica, bless her, would just smile and say, "We don't match." That's the point. Then the questions got more aggressive. Karen sent us letters, official-looking, with HOA headers, requesting integration into the shared security framework. That meant installing cameras from their third-party vendor that streamed directly to the HOA's internal system. I read the fine print. They wanted control of camera angles, remote access, and authorization to review footage at will for safety audits. I called it what it was: legal voyeurism. I sent back a typed letter, notarized and filed with the county, stating that our property was legally exempt and any further unsolicited contact would be considered harassment. 2 days later, Jessica found one of their security drones hovering near her studio window. I shot it out of the sky, wrote the incident up as a wildlife control action, and filed it under drone trespass. Nobody came to claim it. Still, it didn't end there. HOA started pushing a new ordinance, quietly slipped into their updated bylaws that stated all homes within a designated radius of community zones were required to comply with perimeter safety protocols. I read it. It was trash. It had no legal bearing on properties not formally included in the HOA charter. But that didn't stop Karen from distributing flyers claiming that non-compliance could result in access restrictions to neighborhood roads and utilities. Access restrictions. That's when I knew she was gearing up for something big. I brought it up at the department, just to be safe. Asked one of our guys in legal to double-check the HOA boundaries. He confirmed we were clear, totally outside their jurisdiction. I let it go for the moment, trusting that facts would beat paranoia. I should have known better. That Friday, I was assigned to assist in a transport run across the county, a late-night call for a psychiatric hold gone sideways. By the time I got back to the car around 3 a.m., my phone had 2 missed calls and a voicemail from Jessica. Her voice was calm but tight. "Hey babe, something weird happened. Some security guys came by. They said they were with the HOA and needed access to the house. I didn't let them in. One of them tried to block me near the front gate. Just. Call me when you can, okay? I felt that cold snap in my spine, the one I only get when things go truly sideways. I slammed the car into gear and turned on the lights. By morning, I was still running hot. I'd barely slept, just stared at the security feed from the night before, watching the frame-by-frame footage of two uniformed men stepping out of a matte black Ford Explorer, walking straight up to my front gate like they owned the place. Both wore black tactical polos with the Silver Mesa Ridge HOA logo stitched on the sleeve, a sleek mountain outline, and some bullshit Latin motto about community order. They didn't ring the bell. They didn't knock. One of them tried the gate code panel like it owed him money, while the other stood just a little too close to the house's northeast blind spot. If Jessica hadn't activated the floodlight override, they would have stayed in the shadows. Jessica was calm. Too calm. She brewed coffee like nothing had happened. That's her way. If she lets fear in the door, it starts decorating the place. I asked her for every detail. She told me how they said they had a directive to verify household access compliance, whatever the hell that meant. When she refused to open the gate, the taller one, crew cut, late 30s, some fake military bearing, stepped into her space and demanded she hand over the front door codes. When she refused again, he asked if she was aware that obstruction of community enforcement could result in escalated measures. The second one, the quiet one, reached into his vest and unholstered a damn taser. Claimed it was protocol for civilian resistance. That's when Jessica activated the internal lockdown and the outer alarms, the only thing that probably stopped them from going further. She stayed inside until they left. I watched them retreat on the footage, the tall one gesturing aggressively toward the cameras. The Explorer pulled away without plates. Of course. I sent a formal report to the sheriff's office, flagged the incident as attempted trespass with threat of force. I also uploaded the footage into a protected drive and made several backups, one to a flash drive I keep in my gun safe, one to cloud storage under an alias, and one burned straight to disk, old school. I know how fast things disappear when you rattle the wrong tree. Around noon, I got the email. It was from the HOA board's generic account. No greeting, just a subject line. Mandatory registration, outstanding property non-compliance. The message read like a ransom note dressed up in legalese. It demanded that I complete an attached property integration form and provide digital access credentials for all perimeter security systems, gate controls, and surveillance feeds. It claimed, falsely, that our home had been accidentally omitted from the Silver Mesa Ridge jurisdiction due to archival mapping inconsistencies. It gave us 7 days to comply, or sanctions would begin, including vehicle access, limitations, postal suspensions, and revocation of community safety privileges. I didn't know whether to laugh or start flipping tables. I forwarded it to our department's legal advisor, attached all the parcel records, and asked her to prepare a cease and desist letter. Then I took it one step further. I drove down to the county clerk's office and pulled every zoning and exemption file related to the Randall parcel, 87 pages of irrefutable paper that traced ownership from my grandfather to me, with explicit language carved in legal granite. This property shall remain perpetually exempt from municipal subdivision associations and any derivative, organizational entities thereof. The clause was so old school it had a wax seal in the original. I scanned it, printed it, laminated it, and stapled a copy to the inside of our front gate. That night, another flyer showed up in our mailbox. This one was from Karen herself. A glossy, smug little trifold titled Building Community Together, Why Compliance Matters. It included passive-aggressive sections like, when one house opts out, everyone pays, and unregulated properties, security blind spots. On the back was a note scrawled in red ink, "We're not the enemy, Officer Randall. Let's do this the easy way." No signature, just a lipstick print seal in the corner. Jessica stood over my shoulder reading with me and said, "That's either a threat or a seduction. Either way, I need bleach." 2 days later, one of our neighbor couples stopped waving at us. A week after that, another neighbor left a message saying they weren't comfortable letting their kids bike past our driveway anymore. HOA had started their campaign, whispering poison, twisting the narrative. To them, we weren't a family with rights and land. We were the rogue outpost, the dangerous holdout, the non-compliant fringe. That's when I had the new sign made. Aluminum, powder-coated black. Installed it on a 12-foot arch over our gravel driveway entrance. Private property not part of Silver Mesa. HOA no trespassing, monitored 24/7, armed response. Next morning, a notice showed up on our camera footage, pinned to the outside of our mailbox with a steak knife. This ends one way or another. The morning it happened, the sky was so clear it felt sarcastic. Jessica had just made tea, and I was reviewing a search warrant draft for a separate case when I got the call to assist on a felony apprehension in Buckeye. I kissed her on the cheek, told her I'd be back by evening, and reminded her to arm the perimeter grid after 9. She smiled and said, "Just make sure you're not the one who gets arrested today." She always jokes like that when I gear up. I never thought there'd be truth in it. Buckeye took longer than expected. The suspect bolted through a church parking lot, dove into a drainage canal, and then tried to swim his way to Mexico through 8 inches of water and an unforgiving rattlesnake. We got him, wet and humbled, and I stayed on to do transport paperwork since the younger deputies were busy posing for selfies. It was late afternoon by the time I got back in the cruiser. My phone was face down on the seat. Missed call. Text from Jessica, time-stamped 15 minutes ago. They're here. 2 guys in uniform asking for access codes again. One of them is getting loud. Attached was a photo, slightly blurred. Jessica had taken it through the tinted glass of our living room window. It showed 2 men in the driveway, both in black uniforms with HOA badges and utility belts. One was facing the camera with a hand raised, palm open like he was giving orders. The other had a hand on his hip, inches from the handle of what I recognized instantly as a damn taser. I floored it, hit the lights. The cruiser roared across county lines as if the devil himself was driving. By the time I turned onto the access road to our house, I was clocking close to 80. The second I cleared the tree line, I saw them. Jessica was standing at the front gate, partially blocked by one of the guards. Crew cut again, the same one from before. He had her pressed between the metal hinge and his body, his hands gesturing wildly as he said something I couldn't hear. The second guard stood off to the side, clutching that taser like he actually meant to use it. Jessica was trying to stay calm. I could see her hands raised, trying to de-escalate. The camera above the door blinked red, recording. I didn't even park. I slammed the brakes hard enough to fishtail the cruiser and killed the siren in the same motion. Doors flew open. My boots hit gravel. "Hands in the air!" I bellowed, drawing my sidearm and leveling it at the taser-happy idiot. "Step away from the woman! Now!" Both froze like deer in a diesel's headlights. Crewcut turned his head, just slightly, and saw the cruiser lights still flashing behind me. He let go of Jessica as if she'd caught fire. The second guy panicked. Instead of raising his hands, he bolted, sprinting toward the edge of the property line. I didn't hesitate. I charged after him, caught him halfway down the hill, and tackled him to the dirt. He screamed something about following orders, and Karen said it was legal. I didn't care. I zip-tied his wrists, shoved him face down on the ground, and read him his rights. Jessica came running. Her voice was shaking now, brittle and high-pitched, the way it gets when the adrenaline wears off and your body starts processing how close it came to breaking. I took a deep breath, shoved the taser back in its holster, and called it in. 2 in custody. Attempted forced entry, threat of assault, impersonation of enforcement officers. Location, private parcel, outside HOA jurisdiction. Send backup and an investigator. Dispatch confirmed. I didn't bother asking if they were surprised. While we waited for the backup unit to arrive, I walked the perimeter with Jessica. She pointed to the place where one of the men had tried to input the override code into the gate panel. We'd upgraded it last month. They never got in, but they tried. I opened the SUV they arrived in. It wasn't even registered to a security firm. It was leased under an LLC, one I didn't recognize. Inside, I found a clipboard with HOA letterhead, stapled to what they claimed was a Notice of Emergency Entry Compliance. It was signed, forged, by someone claiming to be the Director of Emergency Access Affairs. No such title existed. Hell, the board didn't even have emergency powers over non-members. That's when I knew it wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was planned, deliberate, a sanctioned maneuver meant to provoke and control. As the patrol car pulled into the driveway and the real officers took custody of the 2 men, Crewcut muttered something under his breath. "She told us you wouldn't be home." The fallout started before I'd even finished the incident report. By morning, my voicemail was full. Half the messages were from HOA board members using deliberately calm tones to explain that the 2 contracted community officers had simply overstepped in their enthusiasm for safety. The other half were from internal affairs. Apparently, someone had filed a complaint alleging I had misused official resources and authority to settle a personal neighborhood dispute. I didn't need to guess who. The report I filed was thorough. It included timestamps from the security system, footage from our perimeter cams, body cam video from my cruiser, statements from Jessica, and the clipboard with the forged HOA document. I attached stills showing the taser being drawn the moment Jessica was physically cornered, and the printed order that, upon closer inspection, featured a signature copied from an unrelated community newsletter. I labeled the document for what it was: impersonation of legal authority, attempted forced entry, and criminal coercion. Still, the department had to follow protocol. 2 days later, I was called into a formal hearing with the Office of Professional Standards. A panel of 2 captains and 1 civilian investigator asked if I had used excessive force when I tackled the runner. I explained, calmly, that he fled a suspected attempted felony. I reminded them that had I not been the responding officer and it had been someone else's wife at that gate, the story could have ended with someone face down and bleeding. Then came the bombshell. The HOA had filed a parallel complaint with the county sheriff's civilian review board. Karen had written a personal letter describing me as volatile, militant, and a rogue officer using police equipment to intimidate civilians. She included a printed screenshot from our driveway cam showing me holding my sidearm, conveniently, omitting the taser being brandished 3 feet from my wife. The review board didn't take the bait, not immediately anyway, but they requested an external evaluation, which meant that the whole damn thing now had to be reviewed by the State Oversight Division. Paperwork, public record, and worst of all, time. I wasn't suspended, not yet, but the chief advised me to keep a low profile while it played out. Meanwhile, Jessica and I weren't even left alone to breathe. The day after the review board announcement, we got hit with a storm of HOA mailers, glossy, branded with community slogans like Silver Mesa protects its own and Neighborhood First. Most of it was nonsense about restoring unity and proper vetting of all surveillance devices, but one page stood out. A map, our property outlined in red, labeled unverified. They were drawing battle lines. 2 local news stations ran short clips about the incident. I recognized the footage, pulled from HOA social media accounts. Heavily edited, shaky cam quality, paired with ominous narration about a police sergeant accused of drawing a weapon during a neighbor dispute. One channel invited Karen on air. She did exactly what I expected, smiled like a kindergarten principal, and claimed the HOA was just trying to make the neighborhood safer. She accused me of using military-grade surveillance equipment and implied that Jessica's refusal to cooperate created a public danger. She finished the interview with a little shake of the head, saying, "It's sad, really. We just want peace, but some people bring their work home with them." The next morning, someone poured glue into our mailbox. Later that week, HOA security footage was leaked, selectively, of course, showing Jessica raising her voice at the gate during the confrontation. They edited it to look like she was the aggressor. The internet, in all its brilliance, did the rest. Comments ranged from the typical Karen's right to cops always think they're above the law. We even got doxxed. Our address was posted on a Facebook group called HOA Transparency Now. I contacted a lawyer. She was young, sharp, and angry on our behalf the moment she saw the footage. "That's organized harassment," she said flatly. "You're not in HOA jurisdiction. You've made that clear, and they're creating a hostile environment using both misinformation and direct intimidation." She filed cease and desist letters against the HOA, its media reps, and every board member, individually. But then she called me the next morning, her voice tight. The HOA claims to have legal grounds for their access attempts. They submitted documents to the court this morning. I asked what kind of documents. "Something called a retroactive inclusion agreement," she said. "It claims your property was part of the original planned development map, and the omission was an administrative oversight. They're arguing you've been de facto HOA since year 1, and that your exemption was revoked by a clause nobody's ever heard of." I laughed. Then I realized she wasn't joking. "Don't worry," she added. "It's a house of cards, but we're going to have to push back hard." I hung up, then looked out my window. 2 more of those black uniformed guards were standing across the street. Not on our land. Not doing anything. Just watching. I'd been watched before by suspects, gang kids, crooked ex-husbands in custody battles, but never by someone in a polo shirt with a community logo and clipboard. The sight of those two HOA goons standing across the street, arms crossed, was surreal in a way that made your skin itch. They didn't move, didn't talk, just stood there like two bored gargoyles waiting for the sun to go down. I called them in. The patrol unit that showed up 20 minutes later was green. Two rookies who didn't know what to do with a jurisdictional stare-down. They questioned the men, who identified themselves as Silver Mesa Ridge safety consultants. No credentials, no agency ID, just HOA name tags and smug silence. They're not technically trespassing, one rookie said with a helpless shrug. They're on public sidewalk. That's how far it had gone. These weren't just boundary pushes anymore. This was a coordinated campaign of intimidation, the kind you'd expect from a two-bit militia or a mid-budget thriller, not a suburban HOA board. I installed new cameras that same night, covert ones pointed toward the road with long-range infrared. I updated the alarm system with a secondary biometric failsafe. Jessica didn't argue. She hadn't slept properly in days. The next day, the leaks started. Someone, and it didn't take a genius to guess who, sent an anonymous tip to the local press, claiming I had unauthorized weapon stockpiles on my property. Within 24 hours, a zoning officer showed up with a clipboard and a camera citing a citizen concern. I handed him a glass of lemonade and the original property deed with all the storage permits highlighted in yellow. He left sheepishly. But the hits kept coming. Jessica's art gallery downtown called and said they were pulling her exhibit. Something about community backlash. A food delivery guy refused to come past the gate, said his app flagged our address as non-cooperative. Even our water delivery service canceled. The HOA had apparently added our driveway to their restricted zone list. That night, I opened our front gate to retrieve a package and found a dead coyote carcass laid out just inside the fence. Its throat was slashed, and a HOA flyer was stapled to its fur. I reported it. Nothing happened. So I did what cops are trained to do when the front doors are bolted shut. I looked sideways. I reached out to an old contact, Marcia Doyle, a county zoning specialist who owed me a favor from a meth lab shutdown I'd tipped her off to 2 years ago. I sent her the retroactive inclusion form the HOA had submitted to the court and asked her to trace the origin of the development boundaries. 2 days later, she showed up at my house unannounced, carrying a file folder that looked like it had been dragged through a swamp. I shouldn't be here, she said, stepping inside, but what I found, this is bad. She laid out 3 maps, zoning revisions from 1996, 2005, and 2013. Our parcel was never part of the HOA, not once. But on the document submitted by Karen's legal team, someone had added a 4th map, undated, where our property had been photoshopped into the HOA outline. Sloppily, the edges weren't aligned. It didn't even match the scale. That's not a mistake, Marcia said. That's forgery. Then she pulled out a 4th paper, a draft of HOA meeting minutes from a closed board session dated 3 weeks before the break-in. It read, in part, if Officer Randall continues to resist integration, authorize limited entry under pretext of perimeter audit. Deliver community access form in person. If rejected, elevate with tactical pressure. No weapons. Show of authority only. There were initials beside that paragraph. KH. Jessica read it twice before setting it down, hands trembling. We now had evidence, not just of harassment, not just of intimidation, conspiracy. We delivered the files to my lawyer the next morning. She filed an emergency motion with the court requesting a formal injunction against all HOA activity involving us, citing criminal misconduct and attempted trespass under false authority. The judge, to my relief, didn't hesitate. A temporary restraining order was granted within 48 hours, forbidding the HOA or any of its representatives from contacting, surveilling, or approaching our property under any circumstances. But the real storm hadn't hit yet. 3 nights later, I got a text from an unknown number. You think a judge saves you? We built this place. You just live in it. I wasn't sleeping. Jessica wasn't eating. The house, once our quiet fortress, felt like a bunker before a siege. Even with the restraining order in place, we knew they were watching, just far enough to avoid legal violation, just close enough to make sure we knew they hadn't gone away. The judge's injunction had stopped direct contact, But it didn't stop the HOA from acting like a cult with a budget. Karen shifted tactics again. Instead of brute force, she pivoted to narrative control. HOA newsletters now included thinly veiled articles about officers abusing community resources and non-compliant properties endangering neighborhood harmony. Someone distributed flyers with blurred images of our house captioned, "What are they? Hiding? Why does one home defy safety efforts?" Then came the false alarm calls. Twice, emergency services were dispatched to our address by anonymous neighbors claiming to hear gunshots or domestic violence. Both times, the responding deputies knew better, but still, procedure was procedure. I had to walk out of my own house, hands visible, and explain politely that nothing was happening. Jessica watched from the porch with her arms crossed and her lips pressed white. It was harassment. Professional targeted harassment designed to make us look unstable or dangerous, or both. So I escalated. Our lawyer filed a secondary motion, this time not for protection, but for prosecution. We pushed for criminal charges, filing false reports, impersonation of law enforcement, attempted unlawful entry, forgery, conspiracy to commit coercion. We submitted the map alterations, the fake HOA directive, the security footage, and the minutes from their secret board session. And we didn't just go through the courts, we went to the press. I sat down for an interview with Channel 7's investigative team. We gave them everything: footage, documents, names. I even walked them through the whole history, how our land had always been exempt, how Karen had tried to rezone us through fraud, how they'd sent armed men to our front door and lied about it to the public. It aired 2 nights later in a 6-minute expose called "The HOA That Went Too Far." Karen's smiling face, lifted from her earlier TV appearance, was now side by side with audio clips of her threatening escalation and security footage of her men, attempting to pin my wife to a gate with a taser. The fallout was immediate. I watched the HOA forum explode with comments. Some defended her, most didn't. A few demanded her resignation. Someone leaked an internal HOA email chain showing that not all board members had approved the community safety operation. One of them, a man named Harold Grossman, even sent me a direct message through my lawyer offering to testify that Karen had been manipulating board votes and threatening dissenters with fines and lawsuits. But Karen, she doubled down. The next night, a group of residents picketed in front of the HOA office, holding signs that said, "No more bullies," and "Dismantle the Karenarchy." Karen refused to comment. But the following morning, her car was seen leaving the HOA parking lot, escorted by 2 of the same security thugs in black. Then came the fire. Not ours, thank God, but our neighbor 2 lots over. Their tool shed burned to the ground. Fire department said it looked accidental, but the homeowner wasn't so sure. He'd also gotten one of those anonymous texts. Same phrasing. "You just live here." I started reviewing the HOA security protocols. Turns out Karen had hired the private security firm off books. No background checks, no official vetting. I recognized one of the names from a bar fight arrest 2 years back. The guy had a record: assault, resisting arrest, and impersonating a public officer. Karen had given him a badge and called him a compliance facilitator. I sent that file to the state AG's office. Jessica and I started making emergency plans. If things went south, if they got desperate. I relocated our most sensitive equipment, secured copies of every document in off-site storage, and updated our will. It felt extreme. But then again, so did everything now. One night, around 1 a.m., our security system pinged a motion alert. I checked the feed. A figure in black tactical gear stood just outside the gate, staring into the camera. He didn't try to enter. He just raised a hand, not in a wave, not in threat. Just a slow, deliberate point at the house. Then he turned and walked into the dark. The man in black never came back, at least not visibly. But his message stuck like splinters in my mind. Every creak outside, every shadow across the driveway, every flicker in the security feed made my pulse tick faster than it should. Jessica stopped going into town. I stopped leaving the house unarmed. But fear's a poor long-term strategy. So I moved. We petitioned the state attorney's office to accelerate the investigation into HOA fraud and conspiracy. The judge approved limited subpoenas, one for Karen's communication records, another for the HOA's financial activity over the last fiscal year. Our attorney called me late one night, barely containing her grin. "She's been funneling money, Grayson." Personal legal expenses, security contracts paid without vote, over $40,000 transferred to a consulting firm that doesn't exist outside a P.O. box in Tucson. I forwarded the evidence to a friend of mine in the state fraud division. The case ballooned in under 48 hours. What started as a dispute over property lines now involved misuse of community funds, falsified HOA elections, and unlicensed armed contractors operating on private soil. Then Harold, the board member who'd reached out, agreed to testify publicly. He scheduled a live-streamed emergency HOA meeting, inviting all homeowners in Silver Mesa Ridge. Jessica and I tuned in. The screen lit up with faces, tired, confused, angry. Harold didn't hold back. He read directly from internal emails, where Karen instructed board members to expedite compliance procedures on the Randall property, where she admitted to forging HOA minutes to retroactively cover access attempts, where she allocated funds to a legal firm to neutralize outside threats. The community erupted. People shouted in the chat. Homeowners started quoting their own emails from Karen. Threats, fines, silent approvals for surveillance. It was like a dam cracked. One woman claimed Karen had authorized a search of her trash cans for unauthorized substances. Another man revealed Karen fined him $800 for installing solar panels without aesthetic review. Then the bombshell. A young man from the HOA legal team came forward anonymously, confirming that Karen had fabricated the retroactive inclusion clause entirely. There was never a vote, never a plan, never even a legal pathway. He uploaded the original zoning documents to the chat. Our property highlighted in blue labeled excluded private title. Karen had no more ground to stand on, except, apparently, the kind that involved armed lunatics. Because less than 24 hours later, one of her compliance officers, the same man who pointed at our camera, was arrested outside a grocery store after threatening a clerk with a stun baton. He had a binder in his car labeled Randall Protocol. Inside, maps, shift logs, motion sensor timings from our driveway, and a list of response scenarios. The arrest was enough to trigger a full audit of the HOA's private security operations. Turns out 3 of the guards had prior felony records. One had an active warrant. None were properly licensed. Karen was cornered. She scheduled a press conference, tried to paint herself as misled, claimed the documents were fabricated by overzealous staff, and that she was as horrified as anyone. But the moment was gone. The narrative had collapsed. The county sheriff held a joint press briefing with the Arizona Attorney General's office. They announced a formal criminal investigation into HOA Silver Mesa Ridge, naming Karen Helm as a key suspect in charges including document fraud, misuse of community funds, conspiracy to intimidate, and attempted unlawful detention. I watched the clip of her being escorted from her HOA office in cuffs. She didn't look smug this time, just empty. Back in our home, Jessica poured us each a bourbon. We sat in silence for a while. The wind was back, dry, rustling through the desert brush like it had nothing left to whisper. And then I got the call. The civil court had ruled in our favor. HOA Silver Mesa Ridge was to issue a formal apology, cover all legal fees, and pay us $245,000 in damages. Jessica raised her glass. To neighborhood safety, she said. We didn't throw a party. No victory banners, no champagne. Just a quiet sunrise and the rare luxury of peace. For the first time in what felt like years, the cameras picked up nothing but shadows of saguaros and the occasional jackrabbit slipping under the fence. Karen pled out. 5 years probation, mandatory restitution, barred from holding any community office in the state of Arizona ever again. The plea deal required her to issue written apologies to all victims of her misconduct, including us. It came printed on cheap letterhead, signed with a quivering hand and reeking of legal compulsion. We framed it. Right under it, on the wall of my home office, hangs the forged compliance directive she sent with her goon squad. I had it laminated. People hang diplomas and medals. I hang warnings. This one reads in bold print, "Keys to be surrendered. Non-compliance requires escalation." A reminder of exactly how close HOA fantasies can come to becoming paramilitary theater. Jessica's gallery reinstated her exhibit, not out of generosity, but because the new curator feared bad press. She declined the offer and opened her own private studio with the settlement money. She called it Coyote Line. Subtle, brutal, appropriate. The restraining order against the HOA was upgraded to a permanent legal boundary. No physical or digital contact, no zoning claims, no mailings. Anyone representing Silver Mesa Ridge found on our land is subject to immediate arrest. The property is now formally recorded on the county map with a thick black border, exempt, non-subject to HOA, do not contact. We installed a new gate, reinforced steel, biometric locks, and a motion-activated speaker that plays a pre-recorded message in my voice. You are now trespassing on private, protected property. Law enforcement has been notified, but the real statement was the arch. 6 feet tall, custom welded, powder coated. It sits just past the driveway bend where HOA land officially ends. Across the top in solid aluminum lettering, Randall property, no access, no authority, no exceptions. People stop to take pictures of it now. A month later, I founded a small nonprofit, Citizens Against Forced Compliance. It started as a legal help group for others bullied by rogue HOAs. Now it has over 3,000 members across the state, and we've helped 6 neighborhoods remove corrupt boards and rewrite their covenants from scratch. Some nights, Jessica and I sit on the porch and look out over the ridge. Same hills, same sky, but everything feels different. Not because we won, but because we remembered what the land means when you have to fight for it. No HOA rep ever set foot on our property again, but just in case, the cameras still run, the dogs still bark. And the bourbon's still on the shelf, right next to the framed order that once said, I didn't have the right to protect my own wife in my own home. It's quiet now, just how I like it.